The biblical characters lived a long time ago, which can make us think that they don't have anything to do with us. It turns out, though, they're more like us than we may think. Stay tuned to learn more. Hello, friends. Pastor Tim Westermeyer here. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. For the next couple of episodes, I want to talk a little bit about the book that serves as the foundation of our faith, namely the Bible. And for this episode, I actually want to pick up a little bit of what I talked about in my sermon this past weekend, which we will link to up above here. This is a passage from the Gospel of Mark, the 9th chapter. The reading was from verse 30 to verse 37. And it's a story where, among other things, we find the disciples on the way, walking with Jesus, and they're arguing with one another about which of them is the greatest. And one of my senses about how we think about biblical characters in 2021, in our time and in our place, is we tend to look at them, I would use the language as caricatures of human beings, or almost like cardboard cutouts of human beings. We assume, oh my gosh, they lived so long ago, they lived in a different time, I don't have anything to do with them. And so we hear this story, for example, about these disciples arguing about which of them is the greatest, and we think, well, gosh, they were uneducated, they were not as sophisticated as me, they were backwards. I would never behave that way, right? And then something happens. We look a little more closely at for this particular reading, for example, and we discover that perhaps what was driving that argument, what was animating that encounter between the disciples talking about which of them was the greatest, was fear. And we all of a sudden think, well, wait a minute, I kind of know something about what it means to be afraid. Tell me more. And we realize that they are afraid because they're worried about Jesus, they're worried about themselves, they're trying to sort of posture in the presence of Jesus that they're smarter, more faithful than they really are because they don't want him to know how unfaithful and how unintelligent they are. So rather than just be honest with Jesus, they go the other direction, with their questions, they go the other direction and act like, I know everything, and I'm smarter than you are, John, and I'm more faithful than you are, Mark, and Peter, you're not as handsome as me, whatever they were talking about. And all of a sudden, I think when we get below what's going on at the motivating forces of this encounter, we start to think, oh, I kind of relate to that. Again, I've known what it means to be afraid, and I've known how fear can paralyze me from, let's say, asking a question or talking to someone about it. And so when we have that kind of empathy with biblical characters, in this case, the disciples, all of a sudden the story opens up for us, and we realize maybe they have something to teach us. And in this case, I think it's a very simple lesson, or it's probably a lot of lessons, but one simple lesson is when you're afraid, admit it to yourself and admit it to someone else, or if you're not even willing to do that, at least admit it to God. Don't allow your fear to paralyze you. Don't allow your fear to turn into something that's ugly, where you're turning it against other people and acting more smart and more faithful than you really are. Acknowledge it minimally before God that you're feeling lost and lonely and filled with doubts, and who knows? Maybe you will end up feeling better about it, and maybe God will take that fear away. So again, today, just a simple little thought experiment on how we engage a biblical text. I have a feeling other people watching this would be interested in whether you have discovered tips or tools to read biblical texts. What have you learned as you've read the Bible that has helped you understand it? Or alternatively, what questions do you have about interacting with the Bible? If you've got those questions, I'm sure others do as well, and I would love to hear what they are. So please comment in the section below or reach out to me by email or something, and maybe we can pick those up in another episode. As always, thanks for spending a little time with me. Be well, stay in touch, and God bless.